Got a question for you.
Yes.
What is your favorite sound of spring?
Oh, I tell you what, man, if you would have asked me 4 or 5 years ago, no debate whatsoever, the true king of spring, in my opinion back then, would have been the wild turkey. To hear that thunderous gobble in the morning, oh, come on now. But now, I tell you what, climbing in the blind with the camera and hearing that thunder, the true king of spring.
The real
Man.
king of spring, the ruffed grouse, that thunderous subsonic drum
Nothing
that
like
carries through young forest woodlands from North Georgia to Alaska and many places in between. The king of spring, the bellwether of all forest wildlife, the ruffed grouse, is a subject, obviously, for our entire initiative, if you're familiar with who we are.
That's what we do.
But this video is going to be the first in a series of videos that we're creating about the ruffed grouse, about the species, about its management, about creating habitat for them. And we want to take what we've learned, communicate to you guys so we can do what our name implies, give for grouse.
And referencing these videos that we're going to be producing, we're going to go not necessarily step by step, but we're going to teach you about all the wildlife management techniques that you can manage for ruffed grouse and other early successional young forest species of wildlife.
Yeah, ruffed grouse, we think, are coolest bird in the woods. And what's cool about ruffed grouse is all the different management that we can imply to create habitat for the species. Ruffed grouse are a disturbance dependent species, and we can create that disturbance in a lot of different ways under the umbrella of forest management. Forest management can mean a lot of different things, which we'll unpack through this series of videos, but two tools in that management toolbox that come to mind right off the top of the old dome: prescribed fire on a landscape scale, as well as commercial timber harvest, logging, heavy aggressive chainsaw work. Those types of disturbance create the habitat that ruffed grouse need. Ruffed grouse can be tricky to manage for because they require a very specific type of habitat. As Eric mentioned, they're a young forest species. Generally speaking, that is represented by a young forest 5 to 6 years old at the youngest, up to 20, 25 years old. Depending on several different factors, they can make use of habitats older than that. But that sweet spot, we often say ruffed grouse habitat is like a baseball bat, in that there is a sweet spot in the middle in terms of forest age class where grouse do the best. Anything younger than 5 or 6 years old isn't going to have adequate cover. Same thing on the older end of that age class spectrum. It's going to lack appropriate cover for grouse. Grouse need high stem density. Think, in short, the thicker the better. If you're not dip, duck, diving, and dodging, walking through a young forest, generally speaking, it's not great grouse cover.
But does that mean you just grab a chainsaw and go out there and just willy-nilly start cutting stuff down with no goal, no purpose? Or grab some drip torches from Forestry Supply and start walking around and lighting fire? No, you do not. It's so easy to get a hold of a service forester through the state agency or even the private sector. And reference burning, there's a lot of information out there. Fire departments you could lean toward, and other means of doing it. We highly suggest don't go out there by yourself and just start lighting fire to do some good wildlife habitat. That's not what we're talking about. But there is a step-by-step process that, depending on where you live, you're going to have to do some homework, especially if you're wanting to do some controlled burning. Some states don't allow it.
Right.
So, and some states do allow it, but you have to do some permitting and get trained, So there are some homework things that you have to, based on the area that you live in. But one of the main things that people think of to get that early successional, that young forest, is cutting.
Yeah, we usually advocate for commercial timber harvest as step one to explore when you're creating ruffed grouse habitat, because it checks so many boxes. It obviously creates a habitat for ruffed grouse and many other wildlife species as a result. Wild turkey, white-tailed deer, a plethora of songbirds are going to make use of that early successional habitat immediately after a timber harvest as it matures into young forest. And generally speaking, when you're firing up a chainsaw, whether it's commercial or you're doing it yourself, and this is two ways of looking at it, it's all in how you look at it, you're going to have to be aggressive in your cutting.
Yes.
That's step number one, whether it's commercial or you're doing it yourself. If you're working from a blank canvas, let's just say mature closed canopy forest, you're going to have to open up a lot of canopy, and that could be a clear cut is a good place to start a lot of times, and just work from a blank slate. Then you can micromanage the habitat as a result, because you're working from ground zero. The majority, if not all of those trees are going to be removed, and as a result you're going to have a flush 5-6 years down the road of young saplings, native shrubs that all wildlife are going to make use of, but especially ruffed grouse. Clear cutting is certainly an option to explore, but you don't have to, and this is where there's a lot of value in working with a forester, because they can identify your forest type, whether it's oak hickory or mixed mesophytic, what trees are existing in the stand presently that could have value to ruffed grouse and other wildlife by leaving them standing. Keeping in mind you're going to have to open up a lot of canopy, you're going to have to cut aggressively, but that doesn't always mean you have to cut every single tree. If you have a stand with some red or white oaks or some soft mass producing trees like a black gum or a persimmon, anything dropping soft mass, and you got to look 5-6 years into the future, and you have high stem density. If it's a tree that produces a food source for grouse, dropping food into thick cover, that might be a tree worth standing. So you're going to have to cut a lot of trees to begin with, but working with a forester, being intentional and having a plan going into it, you can leave trees looking into the future that might have value for grouse and other wildlife.
So Cody, you asked me a question, let me ask you a question. Let's say somebody went and hired a professional. They did controlled burning, they did some well thought out cuts, and no grouse show up. Was that like, well, that wasn't worth anything, I didn't accomplish what I wanted? Is that a fail?
Not a fail, it's completely a win. The cool thing about grouse management, and again, it's all in how you look at it, two sides of the coin. Grouse are a non-migratory bird. If they're not in the neighborhood, you could have phenomenal grouse habitat. There's no guarantee that grouse are going to move in or occupy the space. If that's the case, it's not a failure. You created life. You created a young forest, which is lacking. On a landscape scale, much of our forest type throughout Appalachia is overstocked, closed canopy, mature forest in need of a disturbance, whether that is prescribed fire or commercial timber harvest. During that disturbance, doing the work, you're creating life for all kinds of wildlife that rely on young forest and early successional habitats.
Yeah, when we do any type of wildlife management, we always discuss that uncomfortable feeling of wildlife management, because when the logging crew comes and you hear the sounds of the trees falling, there's no turning back. You can't put those trees back. And so you have to, in your gut, know that you are doing the right thing. It's never about the now, it's always about the future. And know when you do any type of management, aesthetically, we want everything to look just nice and pretty, and that's not how wildlife management is. You will see it's non-aesthetic, it's not pretty. But it's, just know that you are taking the right step to producing more grouse, having grouse on the landscape, so we can bring the king of spring throughout the whole range, bring it back, right?
Right.
So doing those steps and just knowing you're doing the right thing. And how we define, let's talk about that, Cody. How do we define what a forest is?
A forest is a living, breathing thing, and if you think about it, a forest as it is now is vastly different than what it was 50 to 100 years ago. How we manage it today is going to look vastly different 50 to 100 years into the future if we manage it correctly. It's kind of a piece of art. It's a blank canvas that we can fine tune, we can mold, we can adjust. It's a living, breathing thing that is never finished. And with the right management, we can sculpt it into a beautiful ecosystem. But it does require, in this day and age, human intervention, the right management decisions, fire, commercial timber harvests, TSI, invasive species controls. Unfortunately, the state of our forests in 2026 are such that they need management. I think it's a romantic thought to think that we could just let nature take its course. And unfortunately, that's why ruffed grouse are in the situation that they are now, because of mismanagement of our forests. But when it comes to a forest, and if you look around us, and if you could stand where we are and listen, we're in a mixed age class forest with mixed species composition, which when you're thinking grouse habitat, that's really what we're going for. Diversity in terms of age class. We want little baby seedlings, we want teenage trees, saplings, and in the mid-story. And we want canopy dominant trees and everything in between. If you're standing where we are right now, you could see all the life. There are dozens of songbirds flying about. There are butterflies going back and forth. We're swatting bugs out of our face. Yeah. You can hear the life, and that's all as a result of a well-managed, healthy, living, breathing forest ecosystem. And as we mentioned in the beginning, grouse are a disturbance-dependent species. To wrap this video up, grouse in Appalachia populations are declining. There are pockets and properties where they're holding on. There's pockets and properties where they're doing quite well. As part of our initiative is to tell the story of grouse in Appalachia, but we want to do that telling both sides of the story. And on the property that we're on right now, we're going to use it as a teaching tool to communicate and educate how the right type of management can result in great grouse habitat, which results in great grouse numbers. On the other side of the coin, where management is lacking, which is on a landscape scale across Appalachia, the trajectory is pointing significantly down for the species. So that's what we want to communicate, and hope that you join along with us and learn about the management, but more so than that, connect with the species. And a lot of what we'll communicate and educate and share with you are stories that we've experienced with the bird and its habitat, and the management that it took to get the birds in front of us.
So what we're hoping with these videos, that you somehow, some way, you find that connection with what we're talking about, because not everybody has seen or even know what a ruffed grouse is, but you do know what songbirds are, and you might find that connection with a gold-winged warbler or some wildflowers that respond to a controlled burning. You'll find that connection, and that's what we're really shooting for with all these videos. So Cody, you started off asking me a question. Let me ask you a question. Of all the tools in our management toolbox to manage for ruffed grouse or young forest or early successional, I already kind of know the answer, but what is one of your favorite tools in the management toolbox?
One of my favorite tools in the management toolbox is prescribed fire. And what's interesting about prescribed fire is it's certainly a tool in the toolbox for grouse, but it's not something that we have a lot of experience or examples to show. But in our next video, we've got a very specific example with grouse and a burn unit to show you how ruffed grouse respond to prescribed fire.